Hello and welcome to Newscentral Television. I am Afua Acheampong-Hagan and here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin in Europe, where well-wishers all over the world are praying for quick recovery for King Charles III following the King's cancer diagnosis. In a statement by Buckingham Palace, the King was diagnosed with a form of cancer and had begun treatment just a week after he was discharged from hospital for prostate surgery. The palace also stated that doctors had advised the king to postpone public-facing duties, but would undertake official paperwork. The statement shared by the royal family said His Majesty has commenced a schedule of regular treatments, during which time he had been advised by doctors to postpone public-facing duties. To further discuss this, I'm joined by Newscentral's international correspondent, Afua Acheampong-Hagan. Thank you so much for your time. Now,
Thank you
let's
for having me.
get straight with it. What's the latest on King Charles III's condition?
Well, he spent the night overnight in London. He was staying at Clarence House, which is just up the road from Buckingham Palace. He was in residence there last night, and now he has left London to go back to Sandringham. We saw a helicopter land in the grounds of Buckingham Palace. We saw the King and the Queen arrive there earlier on, and they were taken to Sandringham, where the royal standard is now flying, and that means that the King is in residence there. He has started this schedule of treatment. We have no idea how long that treatment will last, and indeed we have no idea what kind of cancer he has, what stage this cancer is at, or the prognosis. We do not have those details, although Buckingham Palace have been keen to stress that it's not prostate cancer that the king is suffering with. Now, he personally called his sons, Prince William and Harry, and of course his own brothers and sisters, Princess Anne, Prince Edward and Prince Andrew, to tell them the diagnosis yesterday. And we saw Prince Harry arriving in London. He got to Clarence House around 3 o'clock this afternoon, where it's thought he has had talks with his father, King Charles III.
I mean, we are not abreast as regards how severe, advanced the cancer might be. But how do you think this will impact on his duties as king in the coming weeks or months?
You're absolutely right in saying we have no idea how severe this cancer is, but we cannot expect to see the king on public facing duties for the foreseeable future. So, no shaking hands, no cutting of ribbons. That will not be happening for the foreseeable future, because we all know with cancer treatment, it can make your immune system quite weak and quite susceptible to picking up other infections or other diseases. So, he will be laying low in that regard, but his constitutional function will continue. So, he remains the head of state. He will still be getting paperwork in those red boxes from the government that he spends about 2 hours a day going over. He will still be doing that, and he will still be having his weekly meetings with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. So when it comes to the business of government, that continues, and his constitutional function as head of state continues. So there is no talk of bringing in the councillors of state yet. And those are the people that stand in for the king when he's unable to complete his constitutional function. That is not happening at the moment.
I mean, these are sober moments for the United Kingdom. How are, Brits taking it?
Sober moments, indeed. I mean, it was on all the covers of the papers this morning. Every single tabloid and broadsheet newspaper was covering this particular story. It is making the headlines on all your major news media outlets. Throughout the day, we have had updates. And so a lot of people have been talking about the story, and a lot of people have been talking about cancer. 1 in 2 of us will expect to get cancer in our lifetime. And we have had those quite sobering reports recently about cancer rates rising across the continent of Africa, also, especially in cancers such as cervical cancer and breast cancer. And we know that prostate cancer is particularly prominent among men of African heritage as well. So there's lots of conversations happening around cancer, which I think can only be a good thing. It's a good thing when people start thinking about their health, start thinking about getting their health checked. And when the King talked about having an enlarged prostate, he had a great impact on that, so much so that our National Health Service website hits were up 1,000% of people talking about that particular subject or looking for that particular subject. So yes, a lot of people talking about his diagnosis and talking about cancer.
I mean, just on the screen right there, you can see well wishes from, of course, notable figures across the world. We just saw that from a tweet from Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, and also that of the Prime Minister of Britain, Rishi Sunak, wishing the King a speedy recovery. Now, I mean, looking at the cancer itself, prostate cancer, from medical diagnosis, what are the chances, any idea of the chances of total recovery, and how soon?
Well, first, it's important to say that the King does not have prostate cancer. We have to make that absolutely clear.
Okay.
He was having treatment for an enlarged prostate last week, and now a secondary form of cancer was found. And Buckingham Palace wanted to make it very clear that it is not prostate cancer. So let's make that clear first of all. But second of all, when it comes to prostate cancer itself, which is a form of cancer, and there are very many, it really depends on who you are, the type of lifestyle you've been living, and the type of cancer that you have, or what stage it has been found at. All these different factors will affect your prognosis, will affect what stage it's at, and will affect your chances of survival. Now, when it comes to the King particularly, and of course I reiterate that he doesn't have prostate cancer, but when it comes to the King particularly, he's known to be quite healthy, looks after his health, is into sustainability, so likes to live off the land. He eats very well in that respect. He's known for having beetroot juice and things like that. So if he has managed to stay quite healthy, then his prognosis could be very good. That's the thing with cancer, it is highly unpredictable, and every single diagnosis depends on the person, who they are, their genetic makeup, how they have been looking after themselves, how healthy they are, their weight, and other comorbidity factors.
All right, we wish, of course, the King speedy recovery. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, now hundreds of farmers in Catalonia, that's northeastern Spain, blocked roads with their tractors as they joined their European colleagues in a widespread revolt against shrinking incomes, rising costs, and what they say are increasingly erroneous green regulations. In a sign of how politically fraught the environmental issue has become, with farmers venting their anger around the bloc, European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen earlier Tuesday gave key ground by bearing a plan to halve chemical pesticide use by the end of this decade. Now, the announcement came as dozens of farmers protested outside the European Parliament building, angry over shrinking incomes, rising costs, and what they are increasingly saying is erroneous regulations on the green.
Hay un cúmulo de circunstancias que hacen que tengamos que salir a la calle. La burocracia excesiva, que nos comporta muchos recursos, mucho trabajo, los bajos precios, el gasoil está también a precios desorbitados. Es un cúmulo de circunstancias que ja no se puede más y el campo tiene que salir.
Bueno, no era el mateix a la seva època començar en qualsevol cosa ara. Si volguessis començar i no tinguessis terres, ja no valdria la pena començar a fer res. Si no tinguessis plantat, bueno, el que és el relleu generacional que dies, pues, és molt difícil perquè no hi ha els medis que hi havia abans, que ja eren pocs, pues ara ja està impossible.
Diguéssim que no prioritzen els animals de la nacionalitat, sinó que sempre estem anant a buscar porcs a Holanda o a Alemanya i no prioritzem els animals del país. I aquí, aquest país se n'ensorrarà. El que és el sector porcí, si continuem així, estem jugant amb foc ara mateix.
No mos tenen per res, els pagesos. La gent de la ciutat no valora res del que fem nosaltres. Sembla que no se n'enteren sigui amb bèsties, sigui amb terra, sigui amb el que sigui, no mos apoya ningú. Fa 30 anys que estem venent els productes al mateix preu. De què hem de menys tenen les ajudes?
European Union Climate Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra has said that the EU should seek to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by 2040. He said this while proposing a new interim target towards making the bloc carbon neutral in 2050. He said based on the best available science and detailed impact assessment, they are recommending that 2040 target should be a 90% emission cut compared to 1990 levels. He also called for a fair transition that would allow EU businesses to thrive. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba met his Portuguese counterpart João Cravinho in Kyiv on February 6th during Cravio's two-day visit to Ukraine. The Portuguese delegation arrived in Ukraine on February 5th, headed by Cravinho and Education Minister João Costa. Now, he said Portugal has an obligation to support Ukraine. The show of support came at a press conference held with Dmitry Kuleba.
President of Ukraine, according to the Constitution, is the supreme commander of the armed forces. He is also in charge of defense and foreign policy of Ukraine. Therefore, he has full constitutional right to make decisions which he deems necessary to ensure efficiency of governance and achievement of the strategic goal that I described. Again, I would like to emphasize that the President has the right to replace at any time Minister of Defense, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Because, as I said, according to the Constitution, he is the Supreme Commander, and he is the one who nominates two ministers to the government, Minister of Defense and Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Portugal pode dar contributo que não é contributo apenas para a reconstrução de edifícios destruídos pela agressão russa, é mais do que isso, é contributo também para a reconstrução da Ucrânia no sentido de uma nova Ucrânia, uma Ucrânia preparada para a União Europeia. A vitória da Ucrânia é fundamental para a própria Ucrânia e é fundamental para a nossa estabilidade e a paz no continente europeu. E então temos uma obrigação de apoiar a Ucrânia.
Now, following weeks of protest after contested elections, Serbian lawmakers convened an inaugural parliamentary session on Tuesday where several opposition MPs held placards calling for the results to be annulled. President Aleksandar Vucic's ruling Serbian Progressive Party and coalition partners secured 129 of the 220 parliament seats in the December 17th election. The main opposition, Serbia Against Violence coalition, won just 65 seats, but said the vote was marred by widespread fraud. International observers also reported irregularities, including instances of vote buying and ballot box stuffing. Now, some Western nations voiced concerns over the electoral process. Serbia's top court has rejected an opposition action to have the votes annulled. Opposition MPs took their oath of office in Parliament Hall to protest the proceedings.
Učinit ćemo sve što je do nas, da zajedno sa građanima Srbije dođemo do pravde, da učinimo sve da se ponište ovi izbori, da učinimo sve da se stanje u Srbiji normalizuje, da lopovi budu u zatvoru.
Na stanici kada otpravnik ispraćava vozove, tako oni ispraćaju svoju bezidejnost i pokazuju svoje pravo lice. Tako da im želimo srećan put u tom vozu za nigde, a mi ćemo da radimo svoj posao za koji smo izabrani.
Let's now head to the Middle East, where Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels said they struck U.S. and British ships in two separate attacks in the Red Sea, one of which was confirmed by a security firm. In a statement, Houthi spokesperson Sari said the first attack targeted the American ship Star Nasir, while the other targeted the British ship Morning Tide. A security firm Ambrey had initially reported a drone strike on a British-owned cargo ship off rebel-held Yemen, but later said a projectile targeted the Barbados-flagged vessel. It was launched from a small boat sighted in the vicinity of the ship. Ambrey said, adding that the projectile did not impact the ship directly, but exploded nearby, causing minor damage. The British firm said there were no casualties among the crew.
نفذت القوات البحرية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية وبعون الله تعالى عمليتين عسكريتين في البحر الأحمر. الأولى استهدفت سفينة أمريكية ستار ناسيا، والأخرى استهدفت سفينة بريطانية مورنينغ تايد، وقد تم استهداف السفينتين بصواريخ بحرية مناسبة، وكانت الإصابات دقيقة ومباشرة بفضل الله. إن القوات المسلحة اليمنية تؤكد على استمرار عملياتها العسكرية في البحرين الأحمر والعربي ضد الملاحة الإسرائيلية أو المتجهة إلى موانئ فلسطين المحتلة حتى رفع الحصار وإيقاف العدوان على الشعب الفلسطيني.
France will provide an opportunity to remember French citizens killed in the Israeli bombardments of Gaza as the country prepares to pay tribute to citizens killed in the Israel by the Palestinian militant group and 3 others still missing to be held hostage. Now, Hamas' unprecedented October 7 attack on Israel resulted in the deaths of about 1,160 persons, mostly civilians. As militants also seized around 250 hostages, and Israel says 132 remain in Gaza, including at least 28 believed to have been killed.
Le début, donc l'hommage du 7 octobre midi qui sera rendu aux victimes des crimes de guerre du Hamas. Nous y serons présents donc avec une délégation selon les agendas des uns et des autres, donc comptant Caroline Fiat qui est vice-présidente de l'Assemblée nationale, Éric Coquerel, président de la Commission des finances, Manuel Bompard comme coordinateur du mouvement Insoumis et moi-même comme présidente du groupe parlementaire. Nous avons été invités à cet hommage national par le président de la République. Et je veux dire ici solennellement que les polémiques doivent s'arrêter quand la nation tout entière rend hommage aux morts. Je le dis aussi pour l'initiative qui aurait été annoncée par l'Élysée, c'est à confirmer, qui était une demande que j'avais notamment faite au nom de mon groupe, auquel donc, nous saluons cette décision, nous nous y rendrons. Et je crois que là aussi, oui, la nation tout entière doit...
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Egypt on Tuesday as part of his latest Middle East crisis tour. He is seeking a new ceasefire and an enduring end to the Israel-Hamas war. The health ministry in the Hamas-ruled territory that has been under almost 4 months of bombardment said heavy strikes and fighting in Gaza killed at least 99 persons overnight, mostly women and children. Fears for more than 1 million Palestinians crowded into a far southern Rafah area as the battlefront draws ever closer in Israel's campaign to eradicate Hamas over the October 7th attack. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant warned on Monday that the military will reach places where they have not yet fought, right up to the last Hamas bastion where Rafah or Egyptian border. Now, United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs Rosemary DiCarlo has called for all parties to prevent a further escalation of tensions in the Middle East at a Security Council meeting. Now, where China and Russia accused the U.S. of escalating and worsening regional peace and security at a meeting on U.S. retaliatory strikes in Iraq and Syria. This follows fears of expanding regional escalation in an already volatile Middle East following attacks and assassinations in the Red Sea, Lebanon, Iran, and Iraq, as fighting intensifies in central and southern Gaza. Israel's army recently announced several thousand troops will be taken out of Gaza in the coming weeks.
Council to continue to actively engage all concerned parties to prevent further escalation and the worsening of tensions that undermine regional peace and security. Madam President, I reiterate the Secretary General's call on all parties to step back from the brink and to consider the unbearable human and economic cost of a...
And that's a wrap on the news at this time. Don't forget to send in your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. You can also follow us on social media. We are at Newscentral TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Dakpo Adigboyi.